Welcome to the Bonsai Time Podcast, the tree hugger's #1 spot for history, horticulture, and having fun. In this episode, we are diving into the horticultural and historical side of moss for bonsai cultivation and display. This recording that you're about to hear is from a talk that our own Kevin Faris gave to our Columbus Bonsai Society. Over his time in our club, Kevin definitely grew into a local leader who presented for us several times and now leads his own workshops from time to time. Okay, but before we dive into that episode, we want to experiment with a new format and have a couple small segments before the meat of our episodes. So one of the new segments that we want to try is called What's Growing On? And in that segment, we're going to share quick updates with what's going on with your Bonsai Time team. So now Kevin has officially settled with his family in Western Massachusetts. If you happen to be nearby, reach out to him and say hello. Also, Kevin was recently featured in a Japanese television segment on the bonsai artist Kimura, which we will link below this episode. Meanwhile, Kelly is looking forward to the U.S. National Bonsai Exhibition, which we will all be at. And for Ryan, I have a load of new bonsai pots left over from Kevin's move. And these are on my website, invivobonsai.com, which I'll also link to below. So Kevin is working on getting prices to me for some of them. And if you're curious about any pot in particular, let me know and we will get that faster for you. And we can ship those all over the country. So yeah, I guess that's all there is to that. Also, on September 6th, I am leading a Japanese black pine bonsai from seed workshop here at the Franklin Park Conservatory in Columbus. Participants will receive seeds and seedlings of different ages to visualize multiple steps of the process all at one time. And so in this way, I hope to give participants a view of the long-term plan of growing a bonsai from seed. So that is the end of our What's Growing On segment for this episode. Another new segment we want to try out is one that we're calling the Bonsai Bulletin. In this segment, we'll share a handful of upcoming bonsai events that we are aware of or that listeners submitted to us. For the next month, be aware of the Ann Arbor Bonsai Show in Michigan, USA on August 24th, 2025, which is the day that this episode comes out. The U.S. National Bonsai and Pottery exhibits in Rochester, New York, September 12th through 14th. And lastly, the Central Kentucky Bonsai Show in Lexington, Kentucky. This will be September 19th through 21st, also in the U.S. And then the last thing that we want to discuss in our new episode format is the idea of more frequent mailbags. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them on our social media in our new Discord chat that's linked below in the show notes, as well as in the Facebook group or in our email inbox. And we hope to do mailbag content after the meat of the episode as they come in. So that will be more towards the end credits. So without further ado, let's talk about moss.
So as you can see, there's a lot of moss everywhere, right? I spent my last couple of weeks collecting a ton of moss. My wife, who we've all met today, was, that's a lot of moss. As you can see, today we'll be covering moss collecting and bonsai show application for the moss with the pots, because we're having our big show in September. We're not going to go over moss cultivation. We're a little late in the season for that. You want to do that like late spring. That involves ground up sphagnum moss and collected moss like this mixed together. It's a process, and we'll talk about it next year, just in a timely fashion with seasonality. Come on. Sorry. Clicker's not working. All right, well, I'll do this. Okay. All right. What do we know about moss? Anyone? Feel free to shout it out. Raise your hand.
Non-vascular plant.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Likes the shade.
Moisture.
Things we will cover today. What are the benefits of moss to humans all over the world? Moss and bonsai, what's it all about? Where can we find the moss that we want to collect? And what kind of moss are we exactly looking for? In the United States, there's over so many thousands of species of moss, and depending on what climate you're in, it's going to be different. It could be the same here, species, but grow different, say in the south, more humidity. The tools for collecting and preparing and applying the moss, we'll cover that. And so, with what are the benefits of moss for humans? What can we think of? Anybody? Yeah, oxygen. Could it be helpful for soil erosion control? Yeah, we all need that nowadays, especially.
It's a pioneering plant. I mean, it'll be the first thing that shows up in the right conditions.
Exactly. So like you said, improves air quality. If you were to go into a moss forest, Kumi was telling me last night, there's a temple in Japan that's fully moss guarded. And from what I read, that people said it was the cleanest air they breathe in like ever. And it's the quietest sound they've ever heard. Because not only does moss involve good air, it removes extensive amounts of CO2, which is a big topic nowadays with the greenhouse gases, global warming. Not getting too political, but all things considered, better life without a lot of that. And reduction in airborne dust. So it collects and it does not give out. So maybe think about planting more moss in your garden. If you have seasonal allergies, I don't know. Let's talk about soil erosion. And another thing too with the moss that I forgot to put on there, it acts as a sound barrier. It can very de-amplify things and make a very quiet resonance for the whole area. What do we all know about moss in the application with bonsai? Shout out.
You're hiding dirt.
Say again?
Hiding dirt.
For what reason?
I thought culturally bringing dirt into the home is bad. I've heard that.
With the bonsai pot application? For like a show? Why would we do
Yeah,
that?
I'm sorry. I'm sticking with bonsai pots, yes.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else?
You don't want it growing on your trunk.
No. That comes with a certain style that you want of moss collected. Anything else, Ross?
Aesthetics, it looks appealing, looks like grass.
Definitely. We just talked about evokes a feeling of age, stability, and cleanliness. If you have one,
And the texture, I think the texture is always very interesting, shape and texture of it.
definitely, and it corresponds to how that can look above so below, right? And it also helps with better water retention. There's been topics from the past that said moss was the enemy because it kept too much water. But in fact, research has shown, even in regular potted plants that have moss, it's helped them keep more active water in the most uppermost layer of soil. Because that's the friability soil, meaning friability, the sun comes down hard, it's gonna be the first thing to dry out. And if your plant doesn't get enough water, it's only gonna go down faster. So if you have that little bit of permeable space with moss, it's gonna help you keep a plant alive. Not easier, not longer, but just help in the way of kind of a tourniquet.
Well, it probably keeps the soil layer cooler because it's shaded, which
Yeah.
is going to help
Yeah.
keep it from drying out.
And that way too, yeah, because the sides will be the warmest, which will push roots to grow that way, but it'll also, like you said, help with the reduction of water loss. Also helps create a finer root spread across the uppermost layer of soil, which is beneficial because it's a stronger root base. Because if you were to repot, like some of you probably did this spring, you notice you have this area that was just possibly all dead roots, and then below it in the pot, really fine fibrous roots, right? What if we could have everything being like that? It'd be a happier tree than we could think of. I think that photo a lot. What do we think of when we hear the word moss? What memories do we have with it? What do we think of? Anybody?
Wooded area. You think of a wooded setting.
Yeah.
Olympic National Park in Washington.
Washington State, right?
A huge,
Yep.
huge moss.
Yeah, all the temperate, Oregon,
I was gonna, we're going to Minnesota, and all those little islands is just granite with moss and then pine
Right.
trees growing on that little layer of soil.
right?
Yeah.
Where do we think of when we think of Columbus in the city? What do we think of moss with that?
Sidewalk cracks,
Okay. Park of Roses, maybe?
Park of Roses.
Conservatory?
I've got it growing on my stepping stones around the side of the house.
Well, we're coming to your house after.
It's the longer course kind.
Understood.
Roof shingles that are in the shade.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's where I
The
get.
moisture retentive areas, right?
Yep.
These are mosses that I took pictures of in areas that are collectible and or more favorable. Like I said, where can we find and collect moss? In many different environments, as we discussed. Best places to live are driveways, sidewalks, parking lots, local forests, etc. These are all 4 different kind of mosses in the nursery I'm working at up in by Lake Erie. Each one has a different component. I brought every single one if you guys want to feel it after. Some are pillow-like, some are very heavy wooded-like you said, Ken. Different allocation of moisture in different clouds. Some are really thick, some are really thin. Just difference for climate, temperature, and how much moisture they're getting.
You know, one of the things I heard earlier was moss like shade. I'm not seeing shade there.
That's what I was saying. There's moss that will grow just because it's wet. And it's like a tree will grow through habit of climatic information where it will subset itself to grow in a condition that it wouldn't normally grow in. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So this is, like I said, I thought this thing stretched for 20 feet long by 10 feet wide.
And it's not shaded at all.
None. It was 85 degrees that day.
Yeah.
And we were, you can see on my face, a lot of sun. This was by an area that was wet. This is algae that's prehistoric, so don't mind that, but it's called
Liverwort?
no, that one's different. This one's witches something. It's really slimy, you fall and slip on your butt.
Wow.
It smells really bad. This was around the loading dock area where it's very dry, arid, not a lot of moisture, but a lot of water runoff when they're watering.
Witch's
shit
butter.
bags out. Huh?
Witch's butter?
Well, it depends on your access to the moss, because not everyone has access to this, or that. This was on a sidewalk in my neighborhood, a block from my house, in an alleyway that gets some shade, some sun. Like I said, we're not in Oregon where I'm from, because I could walk out my back door and just be the whole world of everything. We're not in Japan, Use what you can. And we'll go over other things too about collecting and what's better to collect off of surface-wise and other things. Right, like I said. Oop. Sorry. Where can we find moss? Continuing on that. When collecting moss, try to always collect from porous surfaces like the sidewalks, cement, parking lots. You see those cinder block walls in neighborhoods. There's a spot over by the Dublin pedestrian bridge that's got really good moss. I've talked to Rob about it. Go have at it. There's plenty that he doesn't need to take. But if you can get over there before the show, that's a really good allocation of moss and the perfect kind for the pond. Try not to collect from logs or deadwood because that will inhibit the decomposition that it's trying to do naturally. And we don't want to disturb that forest aspect. Any questions so far?
Actually, if you want the kind of moss that grows on moss, logs, and deadwood, Corrugated strand board works pretty well, as I've taken my scrap of that and laid it down for pads. Moss loves it, and who cares if it decomposes? I'd rather.
Exactly, right. But if it's naturally set on something in the forest, maybe even down south, Ryan and I have seen that when we've gone collecting. For Midori, there's huge logs that have turned into nurse logs. Everyone knows what a nurse log is? Yes?
No.
Okay. For those of you that don't know what it is, a nurse log is a log or a tree that has fallen down and decomposing. But if you look forward or backward, you'll see sprouts of lines of new trees because it's applying nitrogen and all the other trace elements needed for new growth. So if you see those with all the things they're doing, bugs, moss, what have you, let it be, because it's doing far greater work in the yard. So does that help everyone understands the nurse log now? So now when you walk in the forest anywhere, be like, oh, I know what that is, and you can tell your friends. Cool party trick. Most common moss found in cities, especially Columbus, is what's called silvery bryum. It's the silvery green mounds. Mine's wet, but it was silvery this morning when it was a little dry. But you'll see it in the sun where it's like a little bit of silver, shiny, glittery, if you will. That can be good for application. Like this, like I was saying. That's what was silvery this morning, but now a nice, very green surface because of the moisture outside. This is a Portland Japanese garden. This is their moss garden there. I want to throw this in because we can find moss in a Japanese garden like I was talking about. And when we go see those places, say, if we find a spot here at conservatory where there's a bunch of moss naturally grown, or they implemented the planting of it, or I've never been to Dawes. Dawes might have a moss garden area, no?
Not sure.
Okay. If you ever go to any Japanese garden, there's a nice one in Rockford, Illinois, there's some around. Look at how that moss is grown and try to emulate that when you're thinking about putting it on your pot. Because that's natural, and if we can make it more natural, the better it will look overall. Because if it's plastic, it's like, oh, that looks different from the others. It's also used in this way as a traditional element of design. You know, you got your hard, soft, water, greens, and all the other textures too. The elements of design as that flows into this as well, because it's all relative. You know, the triangle of power. Symbol of harmony and age and tradition as well in the Japanese garden, as well as most of the culture, as we know, this is a Japanese cultural influence we're doing. Good moss versus bad moss. What do people think of this when you hear that? Anyone, say it out loud. We've all seen the bad one, but I don't know if we know why it's bad.
Is Scotch moss another name for arenaria?
I can't remember the Latin name, but I want to say
I think so.
Yes, the one that we all hate that grows and it's all.
Which is not a moss?
No, but yeah,
Yeah.
common name. Everyone knows what we're talking about when we say that, right?
No.
Yeah, we got pictures to show. Don't worry. Good moss. This was not done by me except by Mother Nature. It was an area that was on a bench that was in a shaded area of my house, my little microclimate area by my entry, and I put it there. It's the one at the end here. I'll show you. This guy here, I did not do anything to it except water it. A little weeds pulls out. Sorry. And got some sunshine. And this is about probably a little more than a 1/4 inch thick of moss on here. And most days, even in the straight sun, I don't have to water it once because like we talked about with the retention of water, especially okay, watch it slippery. And with it being so small too, it's this much soil, but then this much moss on top. So something to think about. The Scotch moss is that stuff right here. Everyone seen that? Yes, in their gardens, in their yards. Does anybody have an idea?
Constant battle.
Yeah, I brought this one in, and we can look at it afterwards too for demonstration. As you know, it's hard to keep out. I had this full of like this much, and I pulled it out, and then this is still coming back. And that was a week ago. Does anyone know what the difference is between the two? We've talked about this one already, but why would this one be
The
bad?
Scotch moss is a vascular plant. It actually has little flowers and produces seed pods.
Yep.
And the seeds are so fine that they will disperse in the breeze without any other, they're just little tiny round seeds, and they'll blow into the next pot over, or, if you've got it in your yard, they'll blow up a little bit and populate your plants.
That I never had that stuff in my bonsai until I brought bonsai here to my first show. And now I can't get rid of it out of the bonsai, but here's the neat part. I can't get the stuff to grow in the cracks in my patio where I want it to.
Maybe take the moss from your bonsai and stick it in the cracks and start growing.
I've done it's like it knows I want it there, and I won't go.
Yeah.
Zach was 100% right on how this is dispersed, and it's a pain in the butt. Like,
The other thing is
Yeah.
the roots are about an inch to an inch and a half thick, down.
yep.
And when you get a solid carpet of it, it'll turn into something that looks like on the left.
Yeah.
And it's stealing a lot of water and nutrients from the roots of your tree.
Yeah, and it entangles too and can choke them. Like I've seen, I had a deeper pot, probably about this big as a little training pot. I pulled one strand out and it was about this long. And it went underneath and wrapped around.
Wow.
And I had to cut all that off. And guess what? It still came back the next year. So when you're repotting, be very careful. And if you have your chopstick, this is my hand with the stuff, flick it out. Don't do that because you'll take a bunch of beneficial roots with you and you may have a dead tree later on. So very tedious and light work.
If you reuse your soil like I do, and you have that in it, put it in a separate composter that you leave in the sun so that it gets really, really hot.
Exactly. I was gonna
It'll
say
kill
that.
it.
Yeah, at the nursery I'm working at now, Willoway, they have 1,135 acres of land. And they reuse most of their soil, but they input it in a big dump truck that they cover it and have a steam that gets about 500 degrees. But they still even have problems with this coming back. So, be mindful of what you're using. I'm not gonna get into politics of soil choice, because that's not for me to talk about today, or ever. But find out what works for you, and then if you find this, try to get ahead of it before it gets worse, because you can have problems with the roots. Sick tree creates more problems, fungus, insects, other things. So I'm not trying to scare you all, but just keep up on it. Pardon the words before the pictures. Tools that we want to use for collecting. I've known people in Portland that were using spatulas because they were old chefs. So they didn't want to go out and buy a putty knife. They was like, I have a bunch of spatulas, I'll use that. Same with the tubs. I have small tubs, I have lots of tubs. Kumi's seen a lot of my stuff, too much stuff, she always says. But I use it sometimes. Chopsticks, that is then used for the application. If we're, say this is the moss, my hand's the pot, and put it in. I will show a demonstration after the lecture if people want to see how to do it. How many people have these tweezers, right? You guys, majority of people have them? I never knew really what to use them for except plucking out weeds, right? What do you think this is for? Exactly. Tampering it down. So you don't want to smush it down and rip it apart. This will help you tamper it down once it's in place. So if you don't have them, this is your new best friend. And they're probably, what, $5? Amazon, I think. And then I know Rob has them too. This is what I use because it's sharp. Like I said, I think the chefs I knew in Oregon sharpened their ends because you want to scoop up, not aggressively get it up with a dull edge. Because if it's sharp, it's coming clean off, and then you have less dirt to play with. And what I mean by dirt and collection, you guys see all this dirt here? Yeah. Once it's dry, you want to start taking it away. If you were to do it now, it's just going to start coming apart because it's all held together by the moisture. The bucket that I had yesterday was dry, obviously wet today, so it's going to be a little interesting when I show you, but it'll be fine. My daughter's getting bored of my talking about bonsai. So don't worry.
Get used to that, Kevin.
She'll be a lifelong.
Anything
come on,
Dad
Dad.
says, get used to it.
Don't spend a lot of money on tools to collect moss. You know, if you want to, go for it, but moss is free. Make it as accessible as you can for yourself, you know. I saw a Nick Lenz thing where he was using beer cans and smushing them and making them into a kusamono, and he just would collect moss and he wouldn't even use tools, he just put it with his fingers. I mean, rest in peace Nick Lenz, he's just passed away a few months ago, but similar to that, use what you have, you know. That's my motto now. I'm a dad, I gotta buy diapers. What do we do with our pots post moss application? And does anybody know? what do we do for the show prep? Say we have our moss in our pots, we're getting ready for the show, it's coming up in like 2 days, 3 days. What do we need to do for the pot itself? What are the things we want to do?
Keep it out of direct sun.
Yeah, as far as application for making it pleasant to view, what do we think? What if it's dirty? What do you want to do? Exactly. Yep. Yep. Clean up the excess dirt, small particles with our hand broom. In Japanese, it's called a hoki. I think y'all maybe know what I'm talking about. I'll show you real quick. Right. This little guy. One of the best inventions ever because you can use it for anything, and it doesn't mess with the moss. It's very light, doesn't hurt you. It won't tear up your moss, and it'll make it actually look cleaner and more vibrant because it puffs it up. Similar to like if you were picking out a fro, similar to that. Afro. Picture here. And then what I meant as far as the application for viewing and the pleasure to the eye and the whole setup, which I would love to see everyone do this year since it's the big show, is oiling your pots. What I mean by that is that I didn't bring any oil because it's just going to wash away. But if I were to put this in the show, I would take olive oil or grapeseed oil, something that's a little more has viscosity to it, not vegetable oil because it's smelly. Get an old rag. You're going to clean this off, obviously. This is clean, and you're going to wipe it circular motion one way, and then you're going to go around with a little bit of a drier side. Do it again, let it dry off, and do another. And that application brings a more vibrant color and deeper tone to the pot. I mean, this is just a manufactured pot, but if I were to put oil on it, it would look a little more classy, a little more sustainable, a little more nice to the eye. It wouldn't just be like, oh, I've seen that on the internet for $20. Okay, why would I want to do that, you know?
Is that like seasoning a cast iron skillet?
But no heat, but yes. 100%. That could be a whole discussion later with testing.
You're talking strictly for unglazed pots, right?
Yes, glazed are already shiny, and within that utilization of those, if you want to get practicing, I wouldn't see why not, but I think you're just wasting time if you were to use on your.
Is there benefit to it, like in furniture? I mean, did it help the surrounding or the
Mark, do you know that one?
You know, I would tend to say no.
I was gonna say,
Ceramic is fairly inert.
I was gonna say it's more of a porous, anyways. If anything, the patina, you're probably getting to, right? You're
a
asking
little bit, yeah. It's like old furniture. And
That's
that.
more with age with this because sun, weather, you know, all things. It just takes time. If you look at like the ancient Chinese pots, Nakwatari pots, those are just thousands of years old. I know Chase just had one sold for a good amount of money. Yeah.
Now, the thing about the glazed is, yeah, you could, I don't know many people who do put it on their glazed
I've never
pots.
necessarily do that.
It just makes a shiny pot shinier.
Yeah.
The downside is that it also makes it very slippery.
Yeah.
So if you have a large, yeah, you don't want to use oil on it if it's really large because that thing can slip out of your hands or something.
Exactly. And also too, I say to put it on at least 1 to 3 days before because I've helped out where people hadn't done it back in Portland at one of the big shows when I was still living there. It left marks on the table that they were using for the display table. And that was a very old table. But it was the person's table who asked me to do the pot. I had them put it on so it wasn't in my hands, like basically like Judas. Wash my hands of you. He wasn't upset, but he wasn't happy at what he forgot to do at home. So if you have something that's very important to you, do it before, let it dry out. Because if it's wet, like Ross was saying, it can be slippery and can leave fingerprint marks, and that's noticeable if there's certain light on it too, because you get the gloss and the shine. Again, like Ross was saying, with the difference from a non-glazed to a glazed pot, this is more porous and you have that bit of grog in it that you can feel. I mean, like I said, it's a manufactured pot, so it's just on the machine pretty much. But if you were to have like those old pots, you'd feel it in your hands, or a wood-fired pot. You would never glaze a wood-fired pot. It would just look, I think, absurd, honestly, because it would take away from the life of that pot by itself. Does everyone know what I mean by wood-fired pot? Yeah? Nobody does? Okay.
I've got a few.
Yeah. So wood-fired, if you think of a big kiln, Anagama, other ones, there's a podcast coming out with a wood-fired ceramicist soon. I would say listen to that. He goes through the whole process of wood firing. He does wood firing once a month. It's really good. He's up in New England, whatnot. It's a really good guy.
There are a couple of ceramicists here in town that do wood firing.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Mouse's relatives.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There's two good ones in Yellow Springs. I don't know how far where you all that is, but for us state people, that's kind of interesting.
It's only about 30, 40 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ish. It's Raku's a different allocation technique with certain things, and depending on the size of kiln or the style of kiln you have, you're gonna get a different product.
Raku tends to be a little more brittle. Wood-fired pots actually go to stoneware.
Yeah, it's can't remember the base temp, but it's really hot, and it's one of those ones where if you have the kiln, if you're the lucky person, that's the new person of the club or the community you're in, you get the night watch. You have to watch it all night and continue to feed it and stay awake. While everyone else is partying and drinking, you get to just sit there sober and if you've never seen wood-fired kiln in action, there's plenty of videos on YouTube. Great work coming out of it. I think there's going to be a big resurgence of this coming back. It's just finding the space, notifying the fire department and the police, because it's a very big smoke cloud that comes out.
I think they did 40 cords of wood for the last big fire I saw.
Probably, yeah. I don't know if there's anything within, like, if you're smoking, like, barbecue, like a Traeger. I don't know if there's any allocation of, if I use hickory compared to whatever, I think it's just wood is wood. But definitely don't use treated wood. That chemical is bad to breathe in. And remember to have fun. This is supposed to be fun. I know a lot of people get really serious about it, very just contrived, like, I must have it this way. I'm in the form now where, like I said, I'm a dad. My life is wabi-sabi. Perfection and imperfection, the beauty in all of it. If anything I've learned from my daughter, if I'm tired, don't work. If I want to sleep, sleep. If I'm happy, go play. So, yeah. Thanks, guys. That's all I got.
The Bonsai Time Podcast has been produced by Kevin Ferris, Ryan Houston, and Kelly Louie. Find more information, relevant pictures, and links for each episode in the episode description and in our show notes at www.bonsaitimepodcast.com. To support us in creating more episodes, please remember to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. To go the extra mile, reach out if you'd like to consider sponsoring an episode. To submit questions for future Bonsai Brainstorm episodes or any other suggestions or feedback, reach out to us on social media, through our website, or at bonsaitimepodcast@gmail.com. We are Bonsai Time Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all podcast apps, and at Bonsai Time Pod on TikTok. Lastly, find your host at the links in the description or on Instagram at Kevin_Ferris Bonsai, Bonsai with Kelly, and Ryan is at InVivo Bonsai everywhere or www.invivobonsai.com. Thanks for listening.